the shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia, and to part 3 of what we're calling the preservation restoration of this 1910 Singer sewing machine. When we first started out, we thought we were going to be able to save quite a bit of this finish, and it turns out it was the original shellac finish, and it was very, very badly compromised. It was cracking. We had places where there was no finish. We had stains. So we had to make the decision that the finish was going to come off. We were able to save the original veneer on the top by re-gluing it down and then patching any damages that we found. So we were able to preserve that. But now we're going to try to preserve the look of this piece. Now we've left little dings and chips and rounded edges on this to help it look old. But the real key thing, and something I think is quite important to the owner, is the color. This piece originally was done probably in a golden oak, and over the years it's darkened to a very rich, almost a walnut with a whole lot of black in it. So my job, the challenge for me, was to come up with a scheme, or a schedule rather, as to how I'm going to recreate that color on this newly stripped and sanded veneer. Well, not stripped, sanded bare veneer, and by using a shellac finish. So let me show you what I'm thinking and what I've come up with, and then we'll start to apply it and we'll see how it goes. So today we're going to work on coloring this piece. We're going to try to color match it to the original front drawer, which I've saved, and I'll show you that right now. And here's the original front drawer, and this is the color that we're shooting for. And I've got this rag here to help with the white balance with the camera. But I hope you can see that we've got a very red, rich walnut color with an awful lot of black in the finish. And that's kind of what I'm thinking I'm going to do to match this finish. So I think that's pretty good spot right there. So the first thing I did was take some strips of oak veneer, and I stained this one in walnut, or American walnut, which is the redder of the two walnut colors. And you can see for a base color, that's not too bad. So that was a good start. So then the next thing I did was take a piece that was stained with that same dye and glaze it with some black, and the black settled right into the grain, which is beautiful, but you see we're still off. We don't have that richness. So then I took a piece and I applied a dye stain it's actually sold as cherry, which it's fairly red, and then I sealed that. Then I applied some black glaze and applied some of the red walnut stain over top of it, and I came up with this. And I think that looks pretty good. So I think that's the schedule we're going to use. We're going to dye stain it in the cherry, and then we're going to seal it, then we're going to glaze it, and then we're going to go over the top of it with, then we're going to stain it, and then we're going to go over the top of it with some black glaze. And then if we have to adjust it at all, we can adjust it with some toners. But there you go. I think we've got it very, very close. So let's get started. And here's the dye stain I'm using. It's Cherry by Mohawk. It's an acetone-based dye stain. And I've diluted it with a little bit of acetone to make it a little bit easier to put on. I'm going to apply it with just a piece of terry cloth. Now when you're applying dye stain, it's kind of difficult to get it on without it streaking. So be real careful about overlapping and dark areas. I think I want to go with a stronger color. Let's see how that goes. Okay, so that's with the dye, and that's without. So hope you can see the difference. Let me get cracking on this and I'll bring you back. And take a look at the side of that drawer case with the dye on it versus no dye. And you can see we're getting quite a little bit of color. And there you go, everything's got its first coat of color. We're shooting for that and we're on our way. Next step is for me to seal everything with a coat of shellac. I'll use seal coat to wax shellac. It's a 2-pound cut. Use it in my spray gun. So I got to get set up to spray, and I'll show you just a few second clip of me spraying. But it's going to take me a while to get all these pieces covered. So I'll bring you back. And the shellac's had time to dry. The next step is to wipe on the medium walnut wiping stain. That's going to take an hour or so to dry before we can coat over top of that. This is very similar to the schedule we used on the quarter sawn oak plant stand when we refinished it, just different colors. And this is what I'm using. It's been stirred because I want those pigments. I'm just dipping a rag in the stain and wiping it on, just like so. Okay, let me get to work. Hope you can see we're getting pretty close. We're just lacking the black now. Some of the pieces, however, have stayed fairly light, and they're going to take a little bit extra black. But the drawer cases in particular took the dye and the stain very well, and they've darkened up quite a bit already. The drawers themselves a lot darker, but the flat pieces are going to need a little bit more black. But so far so good. We got to let this set up for about an hour or so. I've got the heat on in the shop. It's down into the low 50s outside. And when the stain hardens up, or stain dries up, I'm sorry, we'll shoot another coat of shellac over top of everything. When the shellac dries, we're going to glaze it. We'll adjust the glaze so everything matches. When the glaze dries, we'll shoot another coat of shellac over that. We'll let it dry overnight, and then we'll add additional coats of shellac as need be to make the finish pretty. But we're moving ahead and making great progress. Okay, our stain is all dried, so it's time for another coat of seal coat. I'll spray that on, and then I'll bring you back. And the second shellac coat is on. You can see here's the drawers. We're starting to pull pretty close. The black obviously is next. There's our trim pieces. They're going to need some black. Look how dark the drawer cases are already. And remember that the drawer cases are shiny. This is flat. This hasn't gotten any shellac on it. So we're getting close. I think the color schedule is going to work out great. So we'll let the shellac harden up, give it an hour or so with the heat on, and I'll come back out here and try to pull them into that color right there. I'll bring you back. Our shellac's had a chance to dry. And you're not going to be able to read this can because I made such a mess, but it's Mohawk's Finisher's Glaze in jet black. And let's see what we can do with this. And now we'll dry brush it. Actually, I want to take some more of this off pretty quick. Just kind of lightly wiping it. And you can see it's a lot of it's staying right in the grain, which is exactly where you want it. And we are really getting close to the color that we're looking for. we'll use the dry brush technique. Well, what do you think about that match, huh? This is the drawer in the original finish, and this is the top that we wound up sanding down to bare wood, paring all the veneer, and oxalic aciding a stain out of it. And I think they are just about a dead match. I am super, super happy with the way that color came out. Alright, we got to let this glaze dry. We're going to give it 2 or 3 hours and get in here and I'll seal it. Okay, the last, well, not the last, but the final coat of shellac has been sprayed over our color coats. To review, we used a dye stain, sealed it with the shellac. Used a wiping stain, sealed it with shellac. Used a black glaze, sealed it with shellac. And this is what we've got so far. It's a dead nuts color match to the unfinished piece. I'm extremely pleased with the way this has come out. It's absolutely beautiful. So for the next day or so, we'll be top coating with more shellac, light sanding, top coating with more shellac, and building our finish. And at the same time, we'll start tearing apart the base, get that wire brushed, and get that painted. So we're on the home stretch with this project. This color match is extremely good, and I'm extremely proud and I'm extremely happy the way it came out. There's just enough wear to this piece that it still looks old. The color still looks old, but so far, fingers crossed, it's looking beautiful. So I will bring you back when I come back to the shop, which is probably going to be tomorrow, and we'll keep plugging away on this project. We've got a little bit of graining touch-up I want to do on some of the repairs, and I'll show you those. But we're making great progress, and we're on the home stretch. So good day. See you tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out with me. We'll keep cranking on this. We'll get it knocked out. See you tomorrow. Good morning. We're back at it. I got in the shop early this morning and got another coat of shellac on all the pieces. This time I used an amber shellac to get a little bit more richness and depth. There were just a couple of small spots that I had repaired that needed some graining work. I should have brought you along, I'm sorry, but basically all I did was take a black wax pencil and just kind of draw little faux grain lines on those areas, and then sprayed over them with the shellac, and they blend right in. It's not that big a deal. Today's focus is going to be to continue to get shellac built up on the pieces, start to sand them as we lay down more shellac, and between coats of that, we're going to blow this apart and get this wire brushed and hopefully painted. The weather outside is not the best. It's cold. It's on and off rain, but we'll see what we can do. So the next step for me is to get this taken apart, and let's get to work. And in the first sewing machine restoration videos that I did, I showed in great detail disassembling these bases. But basically, you have a screw here, or a nut here, or a bolt, or whatever it is. This is a pointed fixture, and then there's a slot on this to adjust the tension of the treadle mechanism. So there's one here, and then this comes off. Then this cross piece here that holds the flywheel assembly and the stress guard comes off. It's bolted here and here, and it just gets disassembled from there. It's not that big a deal. I am going to blow this apart off camera because I have a little bit of a time crunch today, and I will bring you back. And I just noticed here that this cast iron piece has long ago broken off. You can see it's rusted here, snapped off here. So you know, that's normally a job for a professional welder to braze back cast iron. We'll see what we're going to do with this. We may, I don't know. And here's the broken piece of that cast iron base. You can see it's been broken for a while. It's rusted and there's indications where it's been rubbing there. So we're going to try to weld this on with a wire feed welder. I know that to weld cast iron it's supposed to be heated up and brazed. We don't have access to that. We're trying to help the owner out here. I've spoken with her. She would like us to give this a try. So my friend Marty, who's a much better welder than I am, has come here. We're going to try to do this and get this repaired for these folks. The way this is set up, this is the lower corner of the frame. The top is held together, as you know, by the underside of the wooden top, and there's also 3 other attachments that are solid, so there won't be a lot of load on this at all. It'll be just lateral if someone's sliding the machine sideways, and I think this is going to work. So we're going to give it a try because we don't have any other alternative other than to bring this to a welding shop, and I don't think that's right in the budget right now. So here we go. Okay, all credit goes to Marty. Look at that, it lines right up. We got it bolted back in top and bottom. No problem. We'll just double check the angle one more time by putting the second piece on, but I think we're back in business. The next step is to wire brush off all this cast iron. I'm wearing a face mask and a dust mask. I don't have any gloves on yet, but I may put them on. So I've got it clamped up in my outdoor vise, and here we go. And you can see the wire wheel does a great job getting off that old paint right down to the bare cast iron. Here's all the cast iron pieces. They've been wire brushed off. They're ready to be painted. Here's all our wood pieces. They're about ready for reassembly. Here's the machine. I'll clean that up a little bit for the owner. So I think we're drawn to a close here. Once we get the base painted and that paint gets hard, we'll reassemble. So it was a good day in the shop. You know, Marty saved us with the welder, and we got some of the harder stuff done. So we're still grinding away. We're close. And it's time to paint the cast iron pieces of the base. All I do is lay them out on a couple of work tables. I cover the tables with plastic to keep them from getting ruined, and then lay the pieces out, and I just spray paint them with a black Rust-Oleum paint. I'll paint one side, let it dry, flip it over, paint the other side, let it dry, and then I pick each piece up by hand and look at it and do touch-up paint at that time, because anytime you're shooting black on black, you're obviously going to miss some spots. So after everything dries, I hold them up to the light. I look at them with the spray gun in one hand, and if I find a spot, I just shoot it, and that's how I get 100% coverage. But there's no sense you watching me spray. It's no different than when I spray lacquer. So I will bring you back when we're done with this as part of the job. And all our cast iron pieces are painted. You can see they came out very, very nicely. And we're just going to give these overnight, let the paint harden up. I masked off the Singer emblem, which was in gold, and then I just touched it up a little bit with some Rub and Buff. Rub and Buff is a metallic wax compound. It's really handy, and I basically just put a little bit on my finger, and you can control the amount it goes on rather than spray painting it. And you can see by doing that I was able to keep it looking antiqued with a little bit of black peeking through. I think it looks very, very good. Real happy with it. Happy the way the flywheel came out. Obviously the welding repair that Marty did for us yesterday saved the day. And then as far as the wood pieces go, We're letting that shellac get good and hard before we start to put this together. This top got another couple of coats of shellac this morning, so this needs a good 24 hours to harden up. And unfortunately, it's a little bit chilly out, so it's going to take some time. And of course, shellac always goes on glossy. Once we get the entire cabinet assembled, we'll rub it out with some wax and steel wool to the sheen that we want. And there's the top there, and there's the drawer, and there's one of the cabinet drawers. So after about 23 hours of shop time, we're drawing to a close. We've got another hour or so's worth of work tomorrow reassembling this piece, and then a little bit of time adjusting the sheen of the color with as we rub it out. But that's not a whole lot. All right, we had a good day today. Worked around the weather. Got the cast iron painted, and we'll assemble this thing tomorrow. And welcome back. Excuse me. Due to some other commitments, I was unable to be in the shop today. It's now after dinner, and I figured I'd come out here and knock off polishing up this hardware. We have a bit of a conundrum because the owner wants the hardware to look old, and normally in a restoration of this type, I'd make the hardware look new. But again, this is a preservation type restoration, and the finish came out really, really nice. And we're going to try to find some kind of a medium between having the hardware look terrible and having the hardware look brand new. So a tip I picked up from the English Polisher on YouTube, and it's something I've been using for quite some time, is just to use some mineral oil and steel wool, 4/0 steel wool, to clean these up. And then the amount that you choose to take off is up to you. But it gets the dirt off, and then you can leave some darkness in the corners. And you can see how quickly that polishes up versus this here, but at the same time we can leave however much we want. Like I want to leave this stuff in here and around the edges, so I'll probably take this section down a little bit, and this will still look old and used, but it's not going to look grungy. And some of these hinges are in fact just absolutely filthy. So let me get to it and I'll bring you back. And here's an example of a really, really dirty hinge. We just can't put that back on this piece. So let me clean this up with a steel wool and oil, and then I'll bring you back and show you how it looks. And here you go. There it is cleaned up. Notice along the knuckles, I left that stuff. I mean, I knocked it down a little bit, but in general, I left that in the corners to give it that old look. It still looks old. You can see up here, we left a little bit, but it's not filthy. And the same thing on the back. It's now cleaned up. So that'll look nice back on the machine. So that's what we're doing. I'll keep going. Well, there we go. The base is all assembled. I think she came out really well. Base looks great painted. All right, we'll see you in the morning. Well, good morning. Welcome back. With any luck, this will be the final day of this project. It's time to put this old girl back together. Let me show you how I do it. First thing I do is I take the top. You can see how nice that came out. And I lay it down so the top is facing me. Then I start to reassemble it, making sure that everything stays facing me. And then I don't have any questions but what direction things are. And we'll go through it, I guess maybe in fast motion for time's sake. So here we go. And I'm getting ready to put our hinges on the lid. And just a reminder, so it doesn't all end in tears, there are two different lengths of screws that assemble this. The long ones go on the body, the short ones go on the lid. If you take this long one and run it into this hinge, it's going to pop through the top side of your lid. You're going to have to refinish the whole thing all over again. So remember, the short ones go on here, the long ones go into the body. Well, hey, it's all done. I'm real happy with the way it came out, particularly the color match. The drawer is original and everything else blends in. It was a little bit unusual. We finished this one in shellac. There were some little challenges to that. Mostly me just readjusting to shellac rather than lacquer. But I think it came out great. We got this, kept this little mark that she wanted in here from her grandma. We were able to get rid of that ugly stain that we had running across here. And then we were able to save all the original veneer with the exception of a couple little places we patched in. So the drawers came out beautifully. The base came out beautifully. I'm just real happy with this. Now, I often get questions on these Singer restorations. There's 25 hours of shop time in this by blowing it completely apart, doing all the repairs, refinishing every single piece like we did. It took me 25 hours. You can figure out the cost of a restoration like this in a professional shop, obviously, by multiplying 25 times shop rate. I know mechanics get almost over $100 an hour sometimes. I think in a restoration shop, 50, 40 is probably fair plus materials. So this can be quite costly. But if you have one and you think you can tackle it, go for it. And if you have another one, if you have one and you're not sure that it's for you, well, look into getting it redone. My estimate might be different than the one you get, but that's what I have into these. This one here, 25 hours. I'm glad it's done. Well, listen, from our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia. Best regards. Thanks for watching. Take good care. We'll see you next video. And remember, it's just wood, color, and some shiny stuff. And in this case, a whole lot of time. Take care. Bye.